So let me just do a quick introduction. So my name is Chantal Cook. I'm one of the directors of NALP. With us to answer our questions today about options after graduating with a law degree is our patron, Amanda Hamilton. And then kind of in the background a little bit, poor old Nigel, he's dealing with all the tech stuff. So Anne will be looking after the chat. And if you've got a particular question, like something's not working properly for you, then you can always message Nigel through the chat and he might be able to help you out with that as well. Okay, so I think it's time for us to get started. Do stay right to the end, because at the end, I'm going to tell you about the next webinar as well. So that's a reason to hang on to the end and find out what we're doing next. But in the meantime, let's get started with some questions around your options after graduating with a law degree. So I'm basically going to jump straight in, Amanda, and ask you that question. What are my options after I graduate a law degree, assuming that I want to stay within the legal sector?
Hello, everybody, and thanks for that question, Chantal. Well, I'm assuming that if you've got a law degree or you're going to gain and graduate a law degree, that you already know some of the options available, one of which, of course, is to go ahead and qualify as a solicitor or to qualify as a barrister. There is a chance as well of going into the graduate stream to become a chartered legal executive. But you can also take a postgraduate diploma in paralegal practice, the NALP level 7, to qualify as a paralegal. The length of time and the cost, of course, may always have something to do with your decision making on this. As some of you may be aware, there has been a change in the way solicitors qualify, although the old legal practice course is still being offered out by various training providers and is still an option. I think they're continuing it until 2032. So that is still on the cards if you want to do the legal practice course. Clearly, consideration has to be towards cost and time. Last reckoning, I think the legal practice course by some providers anywhere between 15 and 17,000 for the year. There is another opportunity, of course, to join and qualify as a solicitor, to become a solicitor, and that is to join the Solicitors Qualifying Exam Scheme, which has been operating now for the last 2 or 3 years. And you can hop on that and do the SQE1 and SQE2, Solicitors Qualifying Exams 1 and 2. But bear in mind also that you have to have 2 years qualifying experience. We still call that in some quarters a training contract, which is a very similar thing. And you have to take a professional skills course as well during your training. So that's one option after graduation. The other, of course, is to become a barrister, qualify as a barrister. The old BPTC course, the bar training course, is now called the BTC, I believe. It's still rather the same, slight difference in name. And that is a course that you have to apply for and enroll after graduation. But thereafter, the fact is you have to find a pupillage. This is one of the most difficult things because of how competitive it is to gain a pupillage. Last estimation is that only about 38% of graduates who apply, who've done the bar course, actually gain a pupillage in the first year after completing that course. So that's a very, very tough route to go down. Once you've done a pupillage, you then, during which time let me just take a step back. You have to join an Inn of Court. You have to have completed your pupillage and done your what they call dining in halls during your pupillage year, and then you qualify as a practicing barrister. Although you do need to find a tenancy, and this is another very competitive thing to go through. Places are at a premium. The other option, join the new chartered legal executive schemes. I think as a graduate you can go straight in You just need to complete some qualifying experience. All the details about how to qualify as a chartered legal executive fellow is on their website. But I think if you're a graduate already, you can forego any of the academic training they have. And finally, of course, a paralegal. The NALP runs a level 7 paralegal qualification. It's quite easy to complete that within 6 months if you put your mind to it, after which you will be a qualified paralegal and should be able to find work within the legal sector, although once again, we are in the competitiveness area. There's a lot of competition there. But one good thing about taking the level 7 postgraduate qualification is that if you do want to set up on your own, this is a very good route to doing that, because once you've gained that qualification, you need 2 years relevant legal experience before you can apply for a license to practice and set up on your own. More about that, I'm sure, as we go along. So those are the main objects, the main options if you want to join the legal sector.
Now, this may seem like an odd question since we're assuming we've just completed a law degree, but what happens if I don't actually want to stay in the legal sector? Is that degree now completely worthless to me?
Absolutely not. The wonderful thing about gaining an English law degree is that it is very well thought of throughout the world and in lots of other different sectors. I mean, I'm a prime example. I took my law degree and went into all sorts of other areas, and nothing to do with the legal sector. I went into the property business. I went into all sorts of areas. So the academic law that you learn during your law degree will hold you in excellent stead to go into any sector that you like. It's, as I say, held in very great regard in all sectors. So the question really you've got to ask yourself is, what am I interested in? If I'm not interested in pursuing a legal career, what else can I do with this? And the options are very broad indeed. Go into human resources, you can go into any sector at all where the skills and the knowledge you've learned through your law degree will be extremely useful and beneficial to any employer. So I can't really definitively say what can you do with it, because really that's down to you as an individual to make up your mind what you want, what you like, which sector to go in. So it's your choice.
And I guess if you kind of want to stay within, you want to deal with law, but actually you don't really want to work in the legal sector per se, then there are some really interesting things you could do. I remember we've talked about in previous webinars, but things like working in the fashion industry or the music industry and those kinds of things. So you're still perhaps dealing with law and using the degree that you've got, or maybe your extra paralegal qualifications, but you're working somewhere quite kind of sexy and funky.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, it really depends on what your hobbies are, what your likes are in the world. You can actually combine both your hobby and your job in one. I mean, in-house in a Premiership football club, for example, if you're a football fanatic, as I am, I would love to work in a Premiership club. NALP does have members working in Premiership football clubs. But yes, you're right. Any sexy sector, fashion, shoes, cars, if that's your thing, you can take what you've learned and benefit any employer like that.
Now, talking then, if you're thinking about perhaps setting up on your own, so you don't want to go and work for somebody, but you'd actually like to run your own business, can you do that just with a law degree?
You can, but clearly a law degree covers academic law, and not all degrees have any elements of procedure and practice in them, although I am aware that some universities incorporate that now. But it is imperative that you take a further course. Now, setting up in practice, if this is your aim, because you want to offer legal services to the consumer, to consumers and to the public generally. Clearly, going down the route of becoming a solicitor is one option, but that's quite a hefty cost and time factor. I would say that use your degree, take the NALP level 7 diploma in paralegal practice, go away and find some experience in an area of law that you wish to practice. And after 2 years plus relevant legal experience, you can then make an application for a license to practice. Now, a license to practice means that you go through a very rigorous process of checking, and you must also have professional indemnity insurance. But that is the sort of, if you like, the quickest option to getting to that point of being able to run your own business offering legal services.
And if I'm sort of, maybe I don't know exactly what I want to do next, but I want to know kind of what my options are if I were to study further. How by studying more, how many more doors would that potentially open up to me?
Well, I think studying, if you're an academic and you love studying, clearly the routes you can take are to take a postgraduate degree, an LLM as we call it, a master's degree in whatever subject interests you. And then you could go on and do a PhD, become a doctor of law. I have a friend who studied with a law degree, went on to do a master's in international law, and then did a PhD in international criminal justice system. And she's now got a top job at one of the international places in Belgium, I think she's working from at the moment. So it really depends. If you're focused on one interest that really appeals to you, there's no reason why you shouldn't progress your studying further. Now, clearly, there's a time factor, there's a cost factor, and this is what you have to take into account. A lot of people that go on and take a master's and then decide to do a PhD actually teach while they're completing their PhD, and that helps the income somewhat, obviously, during that time. PhDs can take, they used to take a very long time to complete. I think you used to have about 8 years to complete a PhD. These days they've cut it down, I think, to sort of 3 to 5 years to complete a PhD. And for those of you that are unaware what a PhD means, it means you're focusing on one subject. You have to pick a subject and focus on that, do research, and basically you're writing a book about it. That's what you're doing for the 3 years or 2, 3, 4 years, however long it takes. It's a very long, drawn-out process, but at the end of it, it may be worthwhile if this is a subject area that seriously you're very interested in and want to become an expert in, really. And then you become a doctor of law, which is no mean feat at the end of the day.
And I guess with all of these things, if you've got your level 7 that you mentioned earlier, paralegal, that is paralegal qualification level 7, then that kind of also enables you to go off, do paralegal work, get paid for it, maybe work in a practice and get experience, whichever way you're going to do it, or in-house somewhere, while perhaps you work out where your area of interest is, or maybe even, as you say, while you're studying or something like that, because you've got that qualification that actually allows you to go out and work specifically in a law practice in a way that a law degree would require you to have a bit more before you could do that, wouldn't it?
Well, that's right. I think by the time you've done your postgraduate qualification, whatever that may be, you've got a pretty good idea of the kind of law that appeals to you and where you want to focus on. And my suggestion would be that if you are intent on setting up your own paralegal practice, is to try and ascertain what that specialized subject is that you really love, and try and get that experience in that subject area so that by the time you finish your relevant legal experience, you've got it all. And if this is what you want to offer consumers to help them and assist them, then you have the experience, you have the competency, you have the legal knowledge already. Of course, there is the possibility that you've done your postgraduate, you're doing some experience, you're still not quite sure which avenue you want to go down. It's quite possible, actually, that there may be several legal subject areas that you're interested in. And that's fine too. There's nothing wrong in specializing in 1, 2, or 3 legal subject areas. We do have some paralegal, qualified paralegals on the National Paralegal Register that are general practitioners. So they deal with a wide range of areas, from matrimonial to criminal to civil to welfare, blah, 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 blah. My suggestion would be to try and focus on what you enjoy best and what your desires are. If your intent is to help people, it's always a good idea to be a specialist in that area. And the sooner you're aware of what that specialized subject is, the better it will be. You can gain experience and competency in that before you apply for your license to practice.
And it seems to me, but maybe you can sort of put me right if I'm wrong, that actually if you have specialized like that, you're actually more likely to get employment as well. Because as you say, it's a very competitive market right now. But if I were looking at who I was going to employ and I particularly wanted that area, I'd want the person who'd specialized.
Well, that's another thing to bear in mind, absolutely. The sooner you specialize, the sooner you become a more marketable employee that will benefit any practice. But of course, bear in mind as well that there's other sectors that you can work in, and a lot of charities are screaming out for people with legal knowledge to help them through certain, aspects of their daily work life. So, if working for a charity appeals to you, you with your broad knowledge of academic law and a few skills you've gained, you can certainly benefit charities. So the basic principle, I think, here is to say to everybody, the world is your oyster. You don't just have to think about working in the legal sector. There are a millennia of other sectors that you can work in and still use your skills and knowledge. And I think that's the most important message to get out of this webinar.
Well, that's good. I think hopefully that will inspire lots of people to think about what they want to do and how they could actually use their law degree perhaps in a slightly different way than they maybe originally thought, especially since I know that when I did my degree, my feelings about what I wanted to do afterwards most definitely changed during that time. So I think it's not unrealistic to think that someone doing a law degree would feel exactly the same way, that maybe you started off thinking one thing but kind of popped out the other end thinking something else. So I think it's good to know that there are all of these different options. We have got a few questions coming up. I believe Nigel is answering some of them, but maybe just so that everybody can see those questions too. We have had a question because we mentioned the level 7, the paralegal qualification level 7. So how long does that take to complete?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it can be completed in 6 months if you put your mind to it. You have an overall period of 2 years to complete it, but that's down to you. But it is very doable in 6 months. And that's
6 months. Presumably, you're not working on it full time during that period.
Again, it depends very much on how much free time you have. There are 6 subject areas to complete, 6 assignments to complete in 6 months. But certainly, if you can't do it in 6 months, 9 months, a year maximum, as I say, you've got an overall period of 2 years to complete it if you're finding it difficult because of family matters, work matters, etc.
Lovely. If anybody else has any questions, do please put them in the chat and we will come to those and answer them as well. And we've got a little bit more time left. So do make the most of Amanda's knowledge here while you're here, because that's kind of the point of it, really. And thank you. We have another question. So how can I study law with NALP and be qualified to work abroad?
Yes, there is the question. Well, as most of you will probably know already, the English legal system is quite unique. Most countries abroad, when we say abroad, we're talking about Europe, South America, North America, etc. They have a different system of law. However, there are countries in the world where you can take your qualification that you've gained in England and use it there. I'm thinking some African countries, some West Indian countries, Jamaica, Barbados, all those that have been influenced, India, Pakistan, all those countries that have been influenced by the English legal system will still accept the qualifications you gain in England. However, if you are thinking of working in Europe, I'm afraid this is not transferable. Europe has a completely different system of law, as does Scotland, as does the Republic of Ireland. So bear that in mind. I noticed something popped up. Somebody's mentioned Cyprus. Is there a question? I didn't.
If I live in Cyprus, which Cyprus law is mostly based on UK law with a few modifications to some areas.
Yes, indeed, Cyprus is very much influenced by the English legal system, although there are strains of Cyprus law as well. And if you do intend to take your qualification over there, it would be a good idea to brush up on your Cyprus law in addition to that, although I am very much aware, as we have a centre in Cyprus, that it's very acceptable over there to bring over and transfer your English law qualification.
It sounds like there's some quite nice, warm, glamorous places you can go and live with a qualification as well.
Actually, while I mentioned that English law is quite unique because of the way it has evolved, there are numerous countries in the world that will take on board anybody with an English legal qualification or paralegal qualification. And as I mentioned, those that have been influenced by the English legal system in the past. So, you can find something, a warmer clime to practice law in, if you wish.
Which seems very attractive in the colder winter months of the UK.
It certainly does, Chantal.
If you've got any more questions, so do pop them in the chat. We've got a few minutes left. In the meantime, Nigel has put a link in the chat to, if you want more information about the level 7 diploma, then there is a link in the chat that will take you straight there to get more information. So if you please do put some more questions in, but in the meantime, just to give you a little bit of information, I promised to tell you about our next webinar. So I'm going to let you know about that to give you a chance to just ask those final questions if you have any. So our next webinar is going to take place on the 19th of October. That's also a Thursday at 1 p.m. So the same as this one. And it's going to be about prejudice, discrimination, and the law. So what does the law say about prejudice and discrimination, and how does the law support or not the victim? So we'll be talking about that. That'll be at our next webinar, which is on Thursday, the 19th of October at 1 o'clock. And Amanda will be talking about sort of what the law says about that, how it supports or said or not the victim, but also kind of where some of those grey, difficult areas are. So if you've got any questions about that, perhaps you have been the victim of discrimination or prejudice and are kind of wondering how the law might support you, or if you're a paralegal or legal professional and thinking about supporting a client, for example, then again, that might be some useful information in there to help you understand kind of what the law actually says about prejudice and discrimination. So that's next time. That's the 19th of October. Then we have one more webinar coming up before Christmas, and that will be in November, and we'll have more details on that coming out to you soon. And then we'll take a little break for Christmas and be back in the new year. And obviously we hope we'll see you all in October. We've got one quick final question before we finish off. The question is, would you recommend the level 7 for someone that hasn't done a law degree?
No, unfortunately, the eligibility criteria for applying for the level 7 is that you must have a law degree. If you're interested in a paralegal qualification without a law degree, then we would recommend the NALP level 4 diploma in paralegal studies. And that was designed for people who don't have a law degree. So hopefully that's useful.
Lovely. And Nigel has posted a link to that so you can see where the level 4 degree is and so on in the chat as well. We've got one quick question from Sonia. If you want to unmute yourself and ask that very quickly. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Good afternoon, everybody. Right, sorry. Hi, Amanda, Chantal.
Hi there.
I've completed my law degree. I'm currently doing a master's in SQE Part 1 and 2. When you're talking about getting a level 7, just in case this doesn't work for me, I'm just a backup plan of a backup. But then legal services would be not being able to advocate, right? But would we be able to just fill out forms and do that kind of work? But we're not.
Advocacy is basically up to an individual judge in an individual case. If you want to represent someone in court and you're not a qualified solicitor or barrister, you need to give notice to the court and request permission. Now, it's not unknown for courts to grant this if the judge believes it will enhance the case and prevent time factors slowing down. So if they think it will enhance the case and it will assist your client, then advocacy, representing your client in court and advocating on their behalf can be a possibility.
Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your questions and for joining us today. I hope we've covered everything that you needed to know based on the topic of options after graduating with a law degree. And I think the key takeaway here is world is your oyster. So whatever you fancy, you can go off and do once you've got your law degree. Thank you so much, Amanda, for once again sharing your expertise with us. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to Nigel for working away there in the background, making sure everything runs smoothly. Much appreciated. And thank you to all of you for joining us once again at one of these NALP webinars. We really appreciate your company and look forward to seeing you next time as well. Have a lovely, lovely rest of the day.